Hello, and welcome to Feeling This Life. We're a family support podcast that dives deep into the triumphs, challenges, and strategies that are part of the lives of those who care for young children who are blind and low vision. I'm Paige Maynard, and I'm a teacher of the visually impaired and early interventionist at VIPS, Vision Interventions and Parental Support.
I'm Jenny Castanier. I'm the Family Services Coordinator at VIPS. I am the mother of 3 girls, and my youngest has a visual impairment.
And I'm Dr. Cathy Smith, an independent research and educational consultant out of Fort Collins, Colorado, as well as a former early intervention provider for families of young children with visual impairment.
Welcome back to Feeling This Life. Today's episode is especially meaningful to me. I have the privilege of introducing 2 extraordinary educators, Miss Will and Miss Heady, 2 experienced public school teachers who once taught my daughter. These teachers were part of her journey, her growth, and her story, and today's conversation is about how journeys like hers are strengthened through collaboration between families, general education teachers, and teachers of the visually impaired or other specialties. It's about partnership, it's about possibility, and most importantly, it's about children. Whether you are an educator, a specialist, a parent, or someone who supports children in any capacity, I hope this conversation encourages you. I hope it challenges you, and I hope it inspires you to see collaboration not as an extra task, but as the foundation for a child's future. I'm excited to welcome Miss Will and Miss Heady to the podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourselves.
I'm Meggan Heady, and I've been teaching for 20 years. I taught 20 years in 3rd grade. However, this year is my first year in 2nd grade. I love teaching.
I am Rachel Will, and this is my 26th year of teaching. I've taught both 1st grade, but most of my years have been in 2nd grade.
So, Miss Will, what is your favorite thing about teaching?
I would have to say my favorite thing are the kids. Mm-hmm. That's why I love my job. I think the biggest thing is watching the growth happen. So watching them from the beginning of the year and how they may be unsure of themselves, but then watching them grow academically in reading, also in math, the relationships that you foster with them. You're not teaching kids just about the academics. You're kind of teaching them to be little humans, little kind humans, how to solve problems. How, even though you might fail, you try and try again, and you keep on going. And I think my favorite things, though, are the little small everyday things that the kids do, like the little light bulb expressions that come up, and, you can just see that in their eyes. And then, of course, the hugs, the silly jokes, the silliness of kids is awesome. And then just the little handwritten notes that, I love you, and it makes my day.
Miss Heady, what is your favorite thing to teach or your favorite way of teaching?
Well, just to piggyback on what Miss Will said, I love building relationships with kids. That's probably my favorite thing about teaching. I love how much they love me. I know that sounds selfish, but I love coming into a room and having 25 kids that are eager to hear what you have to say. I love that. My favorite thing to teach would definitely be math. I love numbers. I love teaching kids about numbers. I love using music in my teaching, music and dancing. I love getting kids up. I love teaching funny songs and showing kids different math tricks that help them out with numbers. A lot of kids come in to school not liking math. It's a challenge for me to change their mentality. I just love teaching.
We are definitely lucky to have you all in education. What do you think are the advantages for students with a visual impairment to be in a public school with sighted peers?
It gets visually impaired students in with their peers because when they grow up and they get a job in the workforce, they're not going to be surrounded necessarily with all visually impairment people. So it helps them learn to work with and collaborate with sighted peers and how they're going to face experiences in their real life. I think that's one of the biggest advantages, just learning how to collaborate with people who are different than them, so to speak.
And I would guess, too, the access to the different technologies and resources and all of that, too, would definitely be something that would make public school a good choice, a good fit.
And we had talked about just the self-advocacy
Yes.
piece. In public school, they do have to learn to self-advocate, which is important. Being able to say, I need this, or can you do this a different way? So I think that's also important.
That was one of my favorite things when Hannah was in second grade. That my favorite thing to see was when she came in, how she started, and then towards the end, how much more she advocated for herself. That was one of my favorite things. She's saying, Miss Will, I need you to do this. And Miss Will, hey, can you check this? And making sure I enlarged the copies. Because at that time, that's when they were just teaching her how to use the copy machine. So making sure I had those copies done ahead of time, or if I didn't, I got to get that done. You know, she would say, hey, Miss Will. And I was like, I forgot.
Hopefully she was polite.
It's very good as far as just being in the moment and saying, Miss Heady, can you enlarge that? Because oftentimes we have so much on our plate that sometimes we do forget.
You do.
Whether it was the first child you had, Miss Heady, or Hannah for you, Miss Will, what was your thoughts when you found out you were going to have a visually impaired student? Like your honest reaction and thoughts.
Well, I had a visually impaired student before, but it was like 20 years ago. So it was kind of like the first time again. And I immediately went to Miss Will because Miss Will was Hannah's second grade teacher and I was going to have her for third. And I was nervous and I wanted to make sure that I was doing everything right. I wanted to make sure I hit her IEP. I wanted to make sure that I made the family happy. I wanted to be on my A game. And so I immediately went to Miss Will and I was like, tell me everything.
She did.
But I was also excited. Part of why I like teaching is the challenge aspect. Every year and every day is so different. And you have kids from all sorts of walks of life. And so just being able to figure out the little puzzle pieces. And it was going to be a challenge. I knew it was going to be a challenge just as far as for my organization and being on top of things. So I really piggybacked off Miss Will.
When I first found out, I was a little bit nervous. I was, like Miss Heady said, it was new. I had a lot of questions. Would I be able to remember everything that I needed to do? How much help should I provide versus not? What if I missed something important? Am I going to know how to use all her technology? How do I help her understand what Hannah needs, but not make her feel isolated, but yet include her in everything, but then how much to do and not do. So, but I felt like that was kind of a good thing because it made me intentional with everything too, like making sure I met all her needs. And then, of course, Carrie made everything really, really easy.
That's one thing that intimidated me a little bit is knowing there was going to be another adult in my room. Because sometimes as teachers, it's weird having another adult in your room because you feel like you're being observed. Whereas Carrie ended up being the best support system to me in the world. But in the beginning, I was a little intimidated. And the technology part scared me. The Jupiter, the learning how to use the copy machine to blow up print, because I'm old school. And so I was so used to using my whiteboard, and those types of things didn't work with Hannah. And so the technology part scared me a little bit. And I just wanted to make sure that Hannah was successful in my classroom. And so I put a lot of, I don't know.
Pressure on yourself?
I did. I put a lot of pressure on myself. I wanted to make sure it was going to be great.
I will never forget the day that her cane broke and you got so nervous. Like, I think you said something like, oh my gosh, is that like $1 million? Like,
I did. And I was like, your mom is going to kill me, Hannah. And Hannah was like, oh, it's no big deal. We'll just tape it up. I'm like, you can't tape up a cane. It stressed me out.
I love it. So you talked a little bit about Carrie, and Carrie is Hannah's teacher of the visually impaired, or TVI. So what does real collaboration look like between a TVI or an orientation mobility specialist and a general education teacher?
Well, I just feel like Carrie was a godsend for me. But I wanted to make sure that whoever was working with Hannah, I wanted them to make sure they knew they were welcome in my classroom and that they were a part of my room and that we worked together. All of my students knew Carrie, and Carrie knew all of my students. And I thought that that was important, just making sure that we were a team and that we worked well together to support Hannah as well as the other kids. They benefited from having another adult in the room as well.
Yeah, it was kind of nice. There would be times that, I might be up at the front teaching and I could see it going on the back of the room, but I didn't even have to say anything. She'd go over there and take care of it. So that was nice as far as, for everybody in the classroom, that not only is she assisting with Hannah and her needs, making sure that's met, but then, okay, I can see, let me go help this kid. I can see that they're having a little difficulty. So it was nice having another teacher in the room, not just an assistant, but another teacher in the room, because whatever content we were covering, she would just really piggyback off and just take off and, help the kid understand.
And she came in with a different approach. She had different ideas than I did. I was the general ed teacher, and she was able to help give me ideas to help other kids too. Like, have you ever tried this? So she was very helpful. Her ideas and the way that she approached things were somewhat different than the way I would have approached things. So I learned a great deal. It was a great collaboration.
So I hope that encourages other teachers and other TVIs to not just think you're stepping on someone's toes if you have things to say, but really get in there and collaborate, not just for the one or two students you might have, but for the whole classroom. And I think that goes back to kids being in school with sighted peers and just kind of an experience for all of them. When you mentioned you were scared and nervous,
I was.
If one of her teachers next year came to you, or you had a teacher friend from somewhere else that was about to have a kid with a visual impairment and they called you, what is the first thing you would tell them?
You're going to love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to love it.
Yeah, you've got so many resources to help. Like we said, it's a resource for you as well, having a Carrie or whoever that person is coming in. It really will be fine.
In the same way that you all were nervous, I think a lot of parents get nervous. I know one of my biggest fears about starting in kindergarten was, her being different. And I always worried about the balance of giving teachers too much information or not enough information. I never wanted to seem over the top. And then I also never wanted to seem like I didn't care. What would you say to parents who are nervous about sending their child to public school?
It's going to be fine. One thing that was helpful for me, and I think helpful for you as well, was you and I had a conference before school even started. And you just were an open book, and I was an open book. I told you I was nervous and I wanted to do well, and you laid it all out on the line for me, and we collaborated and talked to each other. And I hope I eased some of your anxiety.
Oh, definitely.
Because even when Hannah was going to be in third grade, I know she had been kindergarten, first, second, and third, but every year is different. And you still come in with being a little bit anxious about what that year has in store for you. New teacher, new year, new content. So I think that really helped. But the nervousness is normal. Even a parent who doesn't have a visually impaired child is nervous. You can tell at open house.
Oh, yeah.
They're anxious, and you just have to introduce yourself and tell them you're there, and you're there to work with them as a team. And there are resources in place. Teachers are going to look at that IEP and follow it. And the collaboration. What do you think, Miss Will?
Yeah, I think nervousness completely makes sense. And, they're not navigating everything alone, and neither are you all. We are a team. Yeah. We're here. I'm here to support Hannah. You want the best for Hannah, and that's what we want. And if everybody knows that and understands that, that's what any parent wants for their kid. A teacher who's going to support and love them and wants the best for them and teach them to the best of their capability. And that's what we're going to do.
Teachers are there to make sure that kids are successful.
So whenever I started with Hannah in elementary school, I was a little bit nervous to ask, even for that pre-meeting in the beginning of the year, because we did it in the summer, and
I loved it.
I don't know where it comes from, but sometimes there's this stereotype of either the school not caring about the IEP or the family being labeled as difficult because they need too much or they're too over the top. So how do you think parents can be strong advocates without being seen as difficult?
Sure. I think a lot of that has to do with your tone. I think you can tell. I mean, everybody, you care about your kid. You want the best for your kid. Absolutely.
I think great parents advocate for their child no matter what. I love working with parents who are involved with their child's education. Being upfront and honest about past experiences. If you had a bad experience in first grade or whatever, let me know of those experiences and being upfront and honest so I can make sure to do things differently. Talking about expectations up front and at the beginning of the year, I think will help alleviate difficult situations. Yeah. I think that's helpful. The conference at the beginning of the year was really helpful.
Yeah, that was honestly, that helped the most. Like, I remember, I think I took notes.
I did too.
I think I took notes because I was nervous, but I was taking the notes because I wanted to make sure, I knew everything. Clarifying everything, letting the teacher know up front, here are some things we're nervous about, but you won't seem difficult if you care about your kid. And that's the thing. You're advocating for your kids.
I love that.
That's not being difficult. All parents should do that. But I don't feel like it's being difficult. But how your tone is with people determines kind of how things go.
And I hope that what our listeners hear, we've been very blessed with a wonderful experience all around with our teachers, the administration, the school district. But I hope what our families can understand is that teachers want to help. They want your child to succeed. And so I would encourage, if you've had a bad experience in the past or you've heard those horror stories, I would still encourage you to go in at the beginning with everyone having a clean slate. Give those teachers, give that school the benefit of the doubt, and just start from a place where both of you are there to care about your child and help your child succeed. And don't put other people's experiences into your experience. That's what I would probably tell other families.
And that's another thing too, off the topic a little bit. I don't like it when teachers from previous grades come to me and say, "Oh, you're getting Bob. Bob is such a hand." And I don't want to hear it because every year is a new start, clean slate, people change. Your experience in first grade is going to be different from your experience in second grade.
Different personalities too, maybe a whole new experience.
Academics are one thing, but parents often have anxiety over social aspects of school as well. How do you help them become part of the community?
I think that starts at day one. First day of school. I love building a team mentality in my classroom. I have a poster that says, "We are a team." I teach my kids we are a team and we are a family. And you don't like everybody in your family, but you have to love and respect everyone in your family. And that's how we do it in my classroom.
I love that.
I can't make you be friends with everybody, but we can respect each other and our differences and get along. And we take care of each other. I tell my kids that too. We take care of each other. We have each other's backs. We respect each other's strengths and differences and weaknesses. We are different and unique, and that's what makes us so special. That's why, and I tell my kids, I love teaching because you're all so different and special and wonderful. And that's what makes every day such a blessing at school. You never know what you're going to get.
Every day is a different day.
And so I think just building that team mentality in your room. What do you think, Miss Will?
Yeah, just understanding that not everybody reads the same reading passage.
Right.
Because the kids are at different abilities, academically. So sometimes this group may read this and this group's reading that. Well, kids are like that. They're all different.
And they know that.
Oh, yeah. And so just being open about differences, and people need different things to help them. Hannah may be using these things, but you need this. I think just being open to all the differences there are, but not singling anybody out.
Being open and honest with the
Yeah.
kids too, I think is important. It's hard for me to remember, but I think I had a conversation with my class at the beginning
I think you did where they talked about her
Yeah.
technology. Yeah.
that Hannah's going to be using this and it's different from what you're using. This is why Hannah's using this. Because I think kids need to know if Hannah pulls out her Jupiter, kids are going to wonder what's going on. And just being open and honest with them and saying, this is going to help Hannah. Just like you said, this is going to, and you're using a pointer because it helps you keep on track with your reading. Hannah's using a Jupiter because it helps her see the print in her book.
Have you seen any sighted students grow from having a classmate with a visual impairment?
Yes. I think it helps them just be more understanding and compassion. I think they learn to be more accepting of each other.
That same year that I had Hannah, I had another student who actually has a visual impairment but hadn't gotten any help. Hannah had her dome, and this child was having a really hard time seeing the text. And so I was like, okay, I've got a magnifying glass. So the different things Carrie had done with Hannah.
And you also used the light covers with Hannah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I didn't realize there was such a glare on the board. And then with Hannah also came the blue light cover, you know, to put it wherever she was to help the glare on the board and everything. Well, I just bought a whole class set for my room and put them up all over everything.
Because it helped everybody.
It really does. You know, I still use those to this day. It helps tremendously with the board and also the light on your eyes.
What gives you hope about the future of inclusive education for kids with a visual impairment?
Before we started, you were talking about how there's been such an increase in visually impaired students coming to public schools. And I think the more visually impaired students that come through our doors, the better teachers are going to get at meeting their needs. Every year we get better ideas.
The technology
is
aspect of it. Yeah, definitely.
We are better educated. We go to trainings. We have professional development.
And being able to teach all kids, regardless of their disability
Absolutely.
or whatever's going on.
Thank you guys so much. Your excitement and love for kids and education is just really encouraging as a parent to any child.
Thanks so much, Jenny, for sharing that great interview. Those two teachers sound like they were just wonderful, and that's exactly what we want to hear when kids are transitioning into general classrooms. I'm going to start off because the research for this week is kind of a big picture thing. It's not individual classrooms. It's not classrooms just for kids with blindness and low vision. It's all of every classroom should have this. And because of that, it's called Universal Design for Learning. And what that means is that in every classroom, we should have multiple flexible methods of presentation. So that means teachers should be sharing information with students with tactile learning, with audio learning, with visual learning, so that everybody has an opportunity to learn in a different way. The next part of Universal Design for Learning is having multiple flexible methods of expression. And that means that we encourage kids and give them the opportunity to show us what they know in different ways, whether it's speaking into a microphone and telling us a story, or drawing something, or using some kind of tactile method with, for instance, Braille, like they can Braille their assignment rather than just writing it. And then finally, the last part of Universal Design for Learning is having multiple flexible ways of engagement. So how we engage children is that we give them all kinds of different ways of learning the content that they have to have. And it's not just one, this is the way you do it. Or my favorite is in kindergarten, often you see that the one of the teachers will have like, this is what I want your art project to look like. I always sigh when I go into the kindergarten class and everybody's artwork looks the same. They should all look different, right? Because it's art and we want them to express themselves. So that would be that classroom that has everything different, has universal design for learning, and that's what we're hoping for. So it was really exciting to hear your teachers talk about the different things that they learned by having your daughter in their classroom.
Yeah, and I was really surprised to hear that Miss Will still uses the shades over the lights. So I had no idea that she kept those and was still using it. So that was encouraging to me because that's one of the things that I always feel a little anxious about because, I mean, it's not hard to put them up, but it's just like one more thing. And it's one of those things that it's not like I don't feel as bad asking for technology or something that Hannah's like staring at and using every day. But sometimes the light shades, even though I know it helps a lot, it just feels like a big ask to put those up. So that made me feel good that she actually really likes them and is still using them.
I think that's great. And that's a perfect example of universal design for learning, because I loved how they, that we should think about. I always tell my students that if you make something, you adapt something and it makes it better for a student with blindness or low vision, it really does make it better for everybody, because you never know if there's somebody in that classroom who's going to benefit from those light shades or whatever else it is that they did. So I think we should be more confident in thinking about those different kinds of adaptations.
Yeah, Jenny, I like what you said about the anxiety piece. I never want to wish anxiety on anybody, but I know anxiety is such, I think, a part of this journey for all parents. And then you have the added anxiety of the things that you're just planning for as a parent of a child who is blind or low vision. And I know many of our listeners have children who are in the birth to 3 range, and there's anxiety when they find out that their child is blind or low vision. There's anxiety when they have their early intervention teacher come to their house for the first time. There can be anxiety over a lot of these things. So what was it like for you when you knew that Hannah was going to join your family and was blind or low vision? And also, what was it like when you were preparing for that first time that a VIPS teacher came to your house?
So funny enough, I think I was more stressed about the first time a VIPS teacher came to our house than when I learned. I was just like, oh my gosh, everything has to be perfect. I don't want them to like crawl around on the floor and have like dog hair. And, I want them to, think that we're doing a good job, and I want my other kids to not be so talkative and engaged, which actually ended up being a good thing. But I was super nervous about just having someone come into our home, kind of like the same way that Miss Heady said she was nervous about having a TVI in the classroom all day. It's just something different and something that's not normally there from someone that knows a lot more than you at that moment. So it was a little unsettling. As far as when we knew Hannah was going to join our family, it was a little bit of a different situation for us since she was adopted. She ended up having less of a visual impairment than we thought. We thought that she was completely blind. All of her paperwork said no vision, no light perception, nothing. And when they brought her to the hotel room, I told my husband, I was like, she's looking around. There's something. There's light perception or something. So that was, the unknown of, and there were other things involved, like what is her health in general going to be like? So, it wasn't just the vision at that point, but kind of once we got a handle on it and started to learn what we could do to help her with her vision, then I started to calm down and feel a little bit better. And,
we're 10 years in now, and she still doesn't have like an actual diagnosis. And we still don't know exactly what caused it or what the future will look like. And for someone like me that's a planner, that is something that I would, thinking about myself, I would like deem that unacceptable. Like, I can't live like this. Like, I have to know. But, we're just taking it a day at a time and just going with her as she grows and managing it. And it's not something that I think about every day anymore.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about like what are the things that have helped you to work through it, but I love what you said, that taking a little bit of time to learn and just being patient with yourself and taking it one day at a time. I mean, what great advice that is, that I hope our families hear and also can implement into their lives too. You were also talking about the first time your VIPS teacher came to your house. So I have the opposite experience as someone who has done many, many early intervention visits. And I will tell you, I'm still always nervous before my first visit. And it truly is. It's that unknown of, I know that it's going to be great once I get in there, but I don't know how I'm going to interact with the family and how we're going to build that relationship. But like you just said, just taking it a moment at a time and taking time to learn. And usually I'll always have a point, before I walk into the family's house, and I'll just sit in my car for a second and just like take a breath and try to be as present as I can and tell myself, the number one thing that I am here to do is to show love to this family. And if I have done that at the end of this hour, then I have done my job. And of course, as part of that, I'm learning about their child and I'm learning about their dynamics. But teachers get anxiety too. And just like your daughter's teachers, the more that we learn and the more that we just, all right, we got this, we're just going on, I think the better that it gets. And we see how much of a positive experience that it is for everybody. Like you said with Hannah's teachers, they learned a lot of things, working with her. There are those pieces that I take from working with a lot of my families. Like I don't know, maybe half of the ideas that I have are because a family was thinking about it and then shared it with me, and I'm like, oh, I should tell that to other families, and I'll ask them if I can take pictures and stuff. So it's so good. We all learn from being together.
It's that fear of the unknown, right? So what's going to happen? I don't know this person. They're coming to share, and when we go in as teachers, we don't know how families are going to be accepting of what we say. So we all have to learn to, and it sounds like, well, I thought it was so cool that your teachers said, well, the second teacher said, when I found out, I went to go talk to the other one. Yay! That's what we need to do, right? We need to talk to people who have experience already. And what was it like? And my heart just stopped when they said, oh, you're going to love it. You're going to love having this student in your class. So, teachers like to learn new things too. We don't want it to be the same every year. We want it to be different so that we can learn too. So,
and that's one of the things I was hoping people would hear from Miss Heady and Miss Will. I think, unfortunately, before Hannah started school, I think I only heard the negative stories of schools and teachers and IEP meetings. And, people were giving me all these, take a picture of your kid and put it in the middle of the table so everyone knows what this is about. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, I gotta be all strategic and, and I just wanted people to hear, that is not always the case. I think so much of my anxiety would have been relieved if I had heard even one good story. And to hear that, not only was I nervous, but they were nervous too. And now to hear you and Cathy and Paige say that you all were nervous, we're all people. And at the end of the day, we all want to help this child. So I hope that people can, at least the first time going in with a clean slate.
Yeah. Well, also that whole idea of, we're all people and we're all learning. What was it like when Hannah transitioned from VIPS to kindergarten? Like, did you meet with the principals, or how did that work when she was going in that direction and you wanted to set her up for success?
Yeah, so we started just talking with her teacher at VIPS, and she kind of gave me some things to ask about, some things to think about that might work for Hannah. Our TVI in the public school also, not with me, but on her own, talked with our VIPS teacher. So they had a conversation before we ever met. So by the time that the TVI, myself, the principal, and I believe it was the guidance counselor all met, I had had information given to me from VIPS. The TVI had met with VIPS, and we were kind of able to just go in and, kind of introduce Hannah and see what the school needed from us, and see the school was able to see what we needed from them. And we definitely started with the principal, and I believe we did that maybe through first grade, but she's been at the same school now for several years, so we no longer meet with the principal before school starts. I mean, he's definitely readily available for us, but it's just not really needed anymore. We kind of just go straight to that meeting that we have before school in the summer. But yeah, he was definitely involved, and I think things are going to change. Like I said, we've kind of gone down on the amount of communication, but now I see it starting to rev back up with her getting ready to go into middle school in a whole new environment. We already have a meeting scheduled at the middle school, and that's even further out than summer. So I think it's just gonna flow forever.
That definitely gels with what I did years ago when I would have a student that I knew was going to a school. I would knock on the door of the principal and say, can we have a meeting? Can we talk about this? How do you feel about this? What are the things that you're concerned about? And tell me about your teachers. So he and I would have conversations, and I would explain to him how I would be as the TVI, I'd be supporting the teacher and the student, and talk about personalities and structure of the classroom and who's going to feel more comfortable, and walk away. And I think we both felt that we picked the teacher, right? So we did it together. So the principal was like, oh, I have this great teacher she really likes to learn new things. Let's try this. And I would say those all sound like wonderful characteristics of a teacher that I can work with and collaborate. And I think it's really, so if that, I don't know if those meetings can still happen anymore. It sounds like you're doing them. Mm-hmm. So that's great. And I really encourage parents to talk to their TVI and get involved in the new school and find out what's going on and how can they help too.
Yeah. Another thing I was thinking about, what kind of changed gears a little bit, is as your child, if they are enrolled in a regular education classroom, the teachers that you interviewed had said that the child oftentimes helps teach their classmates compassion and things like that. And I always feel like that's such an interesting conversation to have, because it really is true. And sometimes that looks very different, because there might be one day where you yourself or your child is like ready to give the whole talk on the technology that they use and their story and what their eye condition is. And then there are some days where you just want to just get things done and you don't want to have a big long conversation because your blindness or your low vision is not the only thing about you. You just want to all right, let's just get on with it. So there's always, I think, that dichotomy between those two things. And as other people who are sighted or not disabled learn to interact with people who have disabilities, they need to understand that sometimes we want to talk about it and sometimes it's just whatever, that's not even interesting about me. So Jenny, do you have any experience with that in your own life or any things that you have heard about school with that for Hannah?
Yeah, so I thought this was funny. This was recent, like a couple weeks ago. I got a text from a teacher that said, I am so sorry about what happened with Hannah yesterday. I'm going to call you this afternoon. And I was super confused because obviously I'd seen Hannah last night and that morning. She didn't say a word. I called my husband, hadn't said anything to him. I texted my older daughters, nothing. We're all very confused, like what happened with Hannah. She did not say anything. So it turns out they had a sub, and the sub said something to Hannah, basically, what are you, blind or something? And Hannah, I guess, was just like, yeah, so that's why I'm doing this. Well, one of her friends was very offended by the way that the teacher talked to her and said that. And she reported it to the principal, which then in return, when the teacher came back, got to her. And that's how it funneled down to me. But the funny thing was when I asked Hannah about it, it took her a minute for her to even remember the conversation. And then she was like, oh, yeah. I mean, I just thought the way he said it was a little rude, but it wasn't that big of a deal. But her friends, they were super offended. And I just think that's a good example of compassion. And like you said, I mean, Hannah very well could have explained. She can explain her vision very well, and sometimes she does. But I guess she just wasn't having it that day because apparently her response was, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it goes to show, too, like when we even say compassion, sometimes that can even be a loaded word because it's not like poor Hannah, she's blind. It's like, yeah, that's just something about her. And like, she didn't need her friend to do that. Yeah. That's kind that her friend did do that, but she could just say, yeah, I'm blind, whatever, and then just move on with it. So that's super funny. And
yes.
Thanks for that story.
Yes, I'm hoping that young lady becomes a TVI someday because we need that advocacy, right? And that is what inclusion is all about. It's not just about the kids with the IEPs who need to be around the typical classroom. It goes the other way too. So the kids who are in the typical classroom, as they grow up to be adults, they're exposed to all kinds of people, including people with blindness and low vision, and hopefully the stereotypes will go away.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Feeling This Life. So, what's new this season? Well, we've opened up a brand new voicemail line so you can contact us directly with your thoughts about this episode, questions, and ideas for the show. You can leave us a message using the link in the show notes, or you can go to our website at feelingthislife.org and click on the voicemail button. Later in the season, we'll be releasing a special listener's mail episode where we'll respond to your messages and dive deeper into our book club choice. So, how can you help build our community? Well, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please consider following it. That way, when a new episode is ready, it will download directly to you. Be sure to share your favorite episodes with friends and family, whether through your podcast app, Instagram, Facebook, or any other social media. Every share helps more people discover the show and become part of this community. Thank you for being on this journey with us. We can't wait to hear from you.